What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stuckey.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
Welcome to the Fantasy Flex podcast from the Action Network and Fantasy Labs. I'm your host, Chris Raybon, and today we're going to discuss preseason fantasy football risers and fallers. As always, I'm joined by one of the most accurate rankers in the business, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. Sean, what's up?
What's up? I had another good weekend of preseason. I think I went like 7-4 over the weekend on sides and totals, and I pretty much watched like every game, at least when like relevant fantasy players were in there. So, a lot of players saw their stock go up and down over the weekend, and happy to dive in right now.
Yeah, I made one bet and I didn't post it in the app because the kind of bet, these bets. I was at the Rams Chargers preseason game.
Nice.
The Rams were down 6-3, and I took the live Ram money line because I was like, the Chargers backups were just terrible. I mean, their depth is hideous, and it ended up working out. So,
nice.
Didn't get to see Puka Nacua, but did get to see some more Jordan Whittington. He looked pretty good.
Yep.
And saw Kamani Vidal try to salvage his role.
Yeah, he looked pretty good, right? He looked solid this week.
None of the Chargers. I mean, it was bad all around. He looked better than week one, but he didn't look like a guy who is jumping Gus or JK, barring injury.
Yeah.
But we have a lot to talk about here. This is one of my favorite episodes because we're just kind of knee deep in our rankings. You mentioned you're watching every game. I'm doing the same thing, and so we're kind of just updating as we go. And there are some significant changes, especially, in that kind of fringe starter range, wide receiver 4 or 5 range, running back 3, 4, 5 range. And a lot of times those picks are really the league winners. Those picks are the picks that are going to decide your draft. So I encourage people to spend more time in those picks and don't get hung up on who you're going to take in the first round and the second round.
Right.
I mean, there's not too many ways to go wrong or right. Like there's just less of a range of outcomes in that range. And it's more about how you kind of strategize beyond, those first few picks. So I always like to mention that off the top, but before we dive into today's episode, I just want to quickly remind everyone that our 2024 Fantasy Football Draft Kit is available right now over on FantasyLabs.com. You can find all of our fantasy football rankings. And remember, we're both top 5 in season-long fantasy ranking accuracy over at Fantasy Pros over the last 3 seasons. So you can find all of our rankings, projections, and more at FantasyLabs.com. And you could get $20 off by using the promo code FLEX20 when you sign up at FantasyLabs.com/flex. That's FLEX20 when you sign up at FantasyLabs.com/flex. All right. We've seen a lot of these young guys playing in the preseason. We've seen who's resting, which can be valuable information at times as well. And we've seen who's injured. So with that being said, let's go position by position. We'll start with quarterback. Who is rising on your draft board after 2 weeks of the preseason?
Yeah, so last week, I think it goes without saying, but Sam Darnold is climbing my QB ranks, after J.J. McCarthy, unfortunately suffered, his meniscus injury that will force him to miss his entire rookie season. I took that gamble in our quarterback rookie draft, and it didn't pay off. But McCarthy looked really good in his limited time, so looking forward to see him next year. But that does mean that Sam Darnold will. I already expected him to be the Vikings Week 1 starter, but he should, have enough job security to really start for them as long as he's healthy. I think, if he struggles, he could get replaced by Nick Mullins or Jaron Hall, but I would imagine he would have to struggle quite a bit for that to happen. And, while Darnold might not be as good as Cousins, he's not that far off, and he does have solid weapons. And, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson, once he's back, closer to midseason. So, he could be, a guy you target in 2 QB super flex or best ball leagues, right around that QB 25 range. I think he's solid there, just given this offense. Plus, he does have some sneaky rushing upside. Back in 2022, he had 19 or more rushing yards in 4 of his 6 starts. So he's a guy that, I think people are probably overlooking going into the season, but now with McCarthy injured, I think he's sneaky once you get outside the top 25 there at quarterback.
Yeah, and if you look at the Vikings schedule, I mean, they're going to have some games where they are going to need to score points. So I don't think they can just rely on, a run-heavy attack just because Darnold is now the quarterback. I think they're still going to have to throw the football, injuries or not. So, yeah, he'll have some sneaky upside, although I kind of low-key am hoping for some Nicky Mullins just because I feel like he's just maximizes Justin Jefferson's upside because he just throws it all around the yard. He'll throw 4 picks and 400 yards.
Like Tampa Bay Jameis Winston style.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. So I'm kind of clamoring low key for for some Mullins, but and I'm probably gonna be on the Vikings Week 1 against the Giants.
Nice.
The Giants, no, I don't want anything to do with them. But for me, the first guy I'll talk about here, Bo Nix. I like what I'm seeing out of Bo Nix, and I think that he is going to be able to, hold this. First of all, start in Week 1, and then hold the job all year. Even though Jarrett Stidham's on the roster, Zach Wilson is on the roster as well. I think Nix is really playing well in the preseason. And the Bronco offense looks a little better than I expected. They're kind of giving us some surprises at wide receiver. It looks like they're going with a really big wide receiving core. Kind of harkens back to the Saints when they had Marcus Colston and who's that other? They had that other who's that other big guy in the Saints that they was it Coleman or so? I forget his name, but they just had a bunch of big dudes
recently. Or
this is in the Colston era, so that's why I'm on it. But just they had a bunch of tall guys, and that's kind of how the Broncos are doing it this year. So I do think, even though Nix is a guy who, for the most part, is not going to throw it downfield as much, I do think all these big wide receivers, Sutton, Patrick, Reynolds, are playing with the ones for the most part. That's going to give him some decent passing touchdown upside because you're not going to have all these diminutive small guys, that aren't really going to be great in the red zone or things like that. So I'm cautiously optimistic on Bo Nix. And this is a Sean Payton offense. We saw what Sean Payton did with the corpse of Russell Wilson last season. Wilson actually had some decent numbers that, did not represent his play at all. Because if you watched him, it wasn't good. But at times, the numbers were okay. So I do think Nix is trending upward this preseason.
Yeah, definitely. He looks good out there, and he has some rushing upside as well. So I think he's a sneaky play down there, like around QB 30 or so.
What other quarterbacks are you looking at?
Yeah, Caleb Williams. Again, I already had pretty high expectations for Caleb entering his rookie season. Just considering how good he's looked, and the surrounding talent he has in Chicago, obviously, he's now moved inside my top 12 already. So I think he opened up like QB 17 before preseason started, but just I've seen enough to really, bump him up quite a bit. He looks excellent on the move, and he's very Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen-esque in terms of making big plays out of nothing. So I think that he's going to break out his rookie season. He has the talent surrounding him. We saw some of that rushing upside again, this weekend. So it's all coming together for him. So I'm a little bit more confident just being super high on him. And yeah, like I said, he's already inside my top 12 as we speak. Yeah,
I mean, quarterback is a position where we've talked about this. if you don't draft Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, or Patrick Mahomes, you're gonna have to play against them. So, shoot for the fences, shoot for the stars if you're going with a late round quarterback. So I have Jaden Daniels in my top 12. I have Caleb Williams in my top 12 as well, and I feel pretty good about it. Another guy, Gardner Minshew, obviously he wins the starting job for the Raiders, so that gives him a little bump. Now he should at least be the favorite to start more games than Aiden O'Connell. I don't know if Minshew holds the job all year, though. With the Colts, he was serviceable and got them, to the brink. So anything's possible. Also, Justin Fields, there's a point in time where they were saying it was no way that Justin Fields had a chance to win this job, and sounds like they've changed their tune. And Russell Wilson looked like crap as he has been doing for the last couple of years in the first preseason game. So I think Fields is drawing a little closer to Wilson in terms of, projected games started. And one other guy I'll mention, and, he did throw a long touchdown in the preseason, but really it's just because after I finished watching all the preseason games, I ended up just watching all of the Packer receivers and tight ends just because there's so many of them. And I just wanted to kind of refresh myself and kind of decide exactly where I want to have all these guys. And one thing that really stood out to me is Jordan Love is ridiculous. Like this guy could win MVP this year. He could be the guy where, we're looking for that guy, that quarterback in outside the top 10. We talked about Jaden Daniels. We talked about Caleb Williams, both of them who I think are very good picks, but it might very well just be Jordan Love. I mean, this guy, he has weapons, he has talent. He can run if he wants to. He's working on the deep ball. He can make some ridiculous throws. He's not scared. He can anticipate. He's got accuracy. He's got the swag. He's a leader. I just really love Jordan this year. No pun intended.
Yeah. No, he's definitely a top 10 quarterback. And going back to Justin Fields real quick, we had talked about that market, that week 1 starter market, and I think Fields is like plus 800. It got down to plus 250, but right now it's at plus 350. But again, like he has so much upside. He has legit, QB1 upside, and he would also get a boost if they do end up getting Brandon Ayuk. So a lot of pass for Justin Fields to be sort of a league winner outside of like the top 30 right now.
Yeah, and also remember, they're not paying Russell Wilson. They could, if he's this garbage, they could just be like, fuck it, get out of here,
right?
Go home to Sierra, bro. All right, running back, who is rising up your draft board after the first 2 weeks of this preseason?
For me, it's Chuba Hubbard. I thought Jonathan Brooks would start the season slow because he did suffer an ACL tear. I think it was in like late November. So it was a late season ACL tear. So I didn't expect him to play right away, I was shocked his ADP was in the mid-20s. I think he's the best rookie running back from this class, but it might not happen this year for him. So Hubbard, he might start the first 4 to 5 games if Brooks ends up, landing on the PUP list. Even when he does return, he might not be 100%, and the Panthers might just limit him as a rookie. So Hubbard, is going to offer like early season value. So if you're a 0 RB drafter, you might need somebody like him to give you, some RB3 flex value early in the season. And Hubbard himself had picked up an injury last week, but he looks, completely over it. So he looks 100% heading week 1. So he's a running back that's been rising up my ranks. Plus there's been some rumors that Miles Sanders could be on the move. Who knows what the hell's going to happen there, but Hubbard could end up being, a top 30 back this year, and you can still get him right around RB40. So he's a back that's been steadily climbing up my ranks the past few weeks.
Yeah, it had well over 200 carries last season, and now you have Dave Canales coming over from Tampa Bay, so that the offense should be better. Bryce Young should be better. The interior of the line is better, and I could see, within Hubbard's range of outcomes, a Rachaad White-like season. That kind of usage, because that's what Canales did with White last year, and Hubbard is kind of a guy that's, I think, profiles very similarly. So, especially if Miles Sanders isn't a factor for one, either because he's just on the bench or because he ends up getting traded. I think Hubbard is definitely a guy to watch. Brooks is just behind the 8 ball. A couple guys for me, a current Buffalo Bill running back and a former Buffalo Bill running back are atop my list. James Cook, he essentially has been playing every single snap with the first team offense. He's rarely coming off the field, and it looks like the number 3 back, whoever that may be, Ty Johnson, maybe Darrington Evans, looks like that role won't be as involved in the offense this year as it was down the stretch last year under Joe Brady. So I think James Cook, he's got the talent. He can catch passes, even though Josh Allen doesn't profile as like a check down guy. This is an offense that lost over 2,000 yards and over 200 receptions with the departures of Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis, among a couple others. So I just like everything about James Cook this year. They were run heavier under Joe Brady as well. So even if he is not playing, like quite as many snaps as he has in the preseason, he still can put up RB1 value just based on volume. But you always have to kind of look out for, there's always going to be a few guys each year that kind of somewhat take us by surprise in terms of just, they're not coming off the field. Last year it was Kyron Williams for a good stretch and Rachaad White as well. And look where they ended up in the RB ranks. So this year, James Cook is definitely on my radar based on the preseason usage. And then Devin Singletary with the New York Giants, Tyrone Tracy Jr., a 5th rounder who they liked. He's going to be hurt to start the year. You never like a rookie to kind of get behind the 8 ball. But Singletary, another guy, pretty much every snap with the first team offense, and the first team offense played well into the second quarter in that entire first half, I believe it was, in the second preseason game because Daniel Jones was struggling. But Singletary found the end zone. The offensive line for the Giants surprisingly looked a little bit better. Now, who knows if that carries over into the regular season? I still think it's kind of a motley crew of parts, but it could be a little better. But Devin Singletary played on 29 of 33 first-team snaps. He ran a route on 15 of the 19 dropbacks, and he had 10 of the 11 carries. So this is a guy who I've been writing him up as a sleeper all off season. And I was saying, he's no Saquon Barkley, but given the Giants paid him they gave him top 15 running back money, they may very well use him like Saquon Barkley, especially after Tracy gets hurt. I do think Eric Gray also has looked good. So I think Gray is the RB2 over Tracy regardless. But 29 of 33 snaps is nothing to sneeze at for Devin Singletary. So that's another one where, just like the second half of the season with Houston, when he was essentially an every snap player and he was very productive, I think he could pick up right where he left off there. Who else do you like at running back?
I'm going to go with Bucky Irving. He's a rookie I've been talking up quite a bit ever since his landing spot was excellent, I think, with the Bucks. And he's been playing really well so far in preseason. And I think he should be able to carve out a role even if, Rachaad White is healthy this year. And, White produced RB1 numbers last year, but a lot of that did have to do with him staying healthy for all 17 games. He didn't miss any time. But he also had very little competition for touches on that depth chart. So, the Bucks drafting Irving in the 4th round, I think signals they do want somebody to push White a bit, maybe have more of a running back by committee. So Irving's a guy that I'm still, high on in like the RB 55 range. I think he does offer a path to RB3 flex value without needing injury, and he could offer RB2 value if White goes down. But he also signals, sort of a red flag for me why I'm not drafting Rachaad White as heavily around RB11 is because I think he is going to face more competition for touches, at least when it comes to Bucky.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Bucky is absolutely going to challenge White. And even down the stretch last year, they tried to reduce his workload a little, get Chase Edmonds a little bit more involved. And, White played on a ton of passing down snaps last year. So you don't really want him to lose those, but you also don't want him to lose early down snaps. So because the efficiency just may not be there for White, because you look at that offensive line and the tackles should be all right, but you're starting a rookie at center and the guards are below average. So that could be a really bad interior line once again. And that's just not going to do any favors for White, who not really a guy who was breaking many tackles or creating much yardage beyond what was blocked. So I like Bucky as well. Some other guys that are creeping up my board based on what's been going on in the preseason. Blake Corum, you always talk about this. When Sean McVay rests guys, that means he views them as an important piece of the offense or the team. And Blake Corum rested right along with Kyron Williams all preseason thus far. So that's notable for a rookie, right? A guy who at some point is going to have to line up next to Matthew Stafford and pass protect. The fact that, but Stafford's not going to get any snaps. So I guess they're like, you know what, screw it. Like, we don't need to see Corum, but I mean, that's like, if I'm Sean, I just would want to see my rookies. I'm just like itching to see these guys. I'm like, I would just do it even if it was against my best interest, just because I just want to kick the tires. But
he doesn't. He loathes preseason. He doesn't take it seriously. He wasn't even coaching. He was up in the booth.
Right.
He was with you having beers in the stands there. Like, he doesn't take it seriously. But I do take your point. Like, he's treating Corum like a starter. He's been talking him up. And like we've said, like, he's very fickle with how he handles his running backs year in, year out. I don't think he's as predictable as people think. So I think Corum has a shot to leapfrog Kyron, even if
no one really saw Kyron. I mean, you saw Kyron coming like 2 years ago, but no one saw what. Yeah, exactly.
Not like that though. I thought like a James White type of like pass catching specialist, not like exactly. A top 3 running back.
Never want to, as you mentioned, rule out potential shakeup in that backfield, and that's an offense that good offense all around. A lot of indoor games, so should be a good situation for running backs. They had the 5th most running back carries last year, so Corum could potentially provide standalone flex value from week 1, and then if Williams gets hurt, obviously then he's really in the RB2, maybe even RB1 discussion.
Yep.
Ezekiel Elliott, I like that Zeke was kept in bubble wrap with some of the other starters, while Rico Dowdle did make an appearance in the preseason. He started, I think it was the first game, only played a few snaps, but it seems like Elliott, they're treating him as the RB1, at least to open the year. And, I don't know where, like, what's going on with CeeDee Lamb. There could be touchdowns to be had. This was the highest scoring offense in the National Football League last year. So, there are some offensive line questions. Elliott is not as explosive as he once was, but number one, they haven't traded for anybody yet. Maybe Miles Sanders or somebody like that, but then they wouldn't be in camp for the whole time. So I think either way, Elliott still opens the year as the number 1 running back and the goal line back. So at this point, you could get him in the mid 30s to late 30s at running back. I don't think there's much risk there, because you're looking at 10 to 12 touchdown upside. And potentially a player that leads his backfield in snaps and touches. So I'm warming back up on Elliott. Braylon Allen, the rookie for the Jets, I thought he looked good in the preseason, and I think he's holding off Isaiah Davis, fellow rookie, for that, and Banacanda for that number RB2 role. Ray Davis looks like the undisputed RB2 in Buffalo, so I like Cook, but I also like Davis. Tank Bigsby, he looks like the clear handcuff for ETN after last year. Dearness Johnson was mixing in a ton. I think Bigsby has looked a lot better this preseason. Mentioned Eric Gray already. I think he's the Singletary handcuff. Carson Steele for the Chiefs. I think he's going to make the roster, be a little halfback, fullback hybrid. And then just because Derrick Henry is slated to see such a big workload, if anybody is on the older side, and Keaton Mitchell's hurt. So if something happens to Henry, Justice Hill, I think, who, by the way, he might be a sleeper in his own right, because he's going to be the number 2 back, and they used him in a featured role, head scratchingly at times last year. So kind of like the Chiefs with McKinnon a few years ago. So, but Owen Wright is playing over rookie Rasheen Ali and outplaying him as well. So just might be something to monitor in case Henry goes down early in the year, but because I don't think Mitchell's going to be back in the first half of the year.
Yep. Yeah. I just did my running back upside ratings chart and report and everything. And I think that, Tank Bigsby and Braylon Allen of this group, and obviously Blake Corum, are the backup running backs I think are, worth targeting at ADP right now.
All right, let's go to wide receiver. Whose stock is rising at that position after a couple weeks of this preseason?
Yeah, for me, it's Khalil Shakir. Because I had originally thought Shakir was a sneaky bet to actually lead the Bills wide receivers in targets this year. Obviously, he's competing with Curtis Samuel and rookie Keon Coleman. But he has the most chemistry and experience with Josh Allen from their past couple seasons together in Buffalo, and he's been pretty good whenever he has seen playing time. Last year, he actually led all qualified pass catchers in EPA per target. Last year, he just has a really good ability to get separation and also create yards after the catch, which just bodes well for him to, be productive with all these leftover targets with Diggs and Gabe Davis, out of the picture. And now, Curtis Samuel was just diagnosed with turf toe. He's week to week. So we're close enough to the season now. That certainly could and probably will impact his week 1 availability. So it probably gives Shakir, an early head start to be the top receiver. Again, he's going to be competing with Coleman there. But, he's a guy I've been kind of targeting later, and now I'm even more willing with the Samuel injury. Sure enough, his ADP will probably climb a bit, but I've been, a bit higher in him, more times than not throughout this offseason. So he's a guy that I'm targeting even more now.
I think Shakir and Keon Coleman are the big winners here because Marquez Valdez-Scantling already looks like a bust. Looks like Mac Hollins is going to be the third wide receiver, at least for the time being. And, Shakir is, like you said, familiar with Josh Allen. He can kind of move inside, outside. So he should be a little bit more consistent than a guy like Coleman. But I like Coleman as well. He's rising too. And there was a while where I feel like his ADP kind of got away from me because I liked him all offseason. But then next thing I know, he's being taken like the wide receiver 45. And I'm like, okay, let's pump the brakes a little bit. But with the Samuel injury, with MVS out, kind of pretty much taking himself out of the picture, Coleman in the 2 preseason games played every single snap with the first team. So that bodes very well. He's getting targeted in the end zone. And remember, when Josh Allen is the quarterback, Josh Allen is going to throw contested tight window throws that he probably shouldn't be throwing. So Shakir is your guy that's probably going to be more consistent on a weekly basis. But Coleman is the upside play. Coleman, I think, is the 10 touchdown upside guy. Because Josh Allen's going to force the ball to him, and they're certainly getting him ready to be, an every down player. It seems like, and potentially, be either, the probably not the Diggs, more of the Gabe Davis. But remember, Gabe Davis is always finishing as a wide receiver, in somewhere in that wide receiver 3 range. So, even as Coleman's ADP starts to creep up a little bit, you can still get him as a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. I think he has a great shot to finish as a wide receiver 3. I mean, Josh Allen's not going to throw like 15 touchdowns all year. So he's going to throw touchdowns. And like Samuel's not a great bet to haul in a ton of them. Shakir a little bit better, but he's not that big either. And Kincaid hasn't been a touchdown guy yet. So where are the touchdowns have got to go to somebody. And I think Coleman's in really good position. Yep. And I love the fact that he is kind of getting his feet wet playing. Didn't flash too much, but just the fact that he's been on the field and he looks pretty solid, on tape. So like Coleman as well in the low 40s, high 50s at wide receiver. And another guy, Josh Palmer. He was him and McConkey rested the first preseason game, and the second one, Palmer played in all of the different formations where McConkey did come out in when they went to 1-2 personnel, and Palmer was also the first wide receiver to leave the game. McConkey played a little deeper, so it seems like Palmer's the clear, wide receiver that's going to get the most snaps to start the year. McConkey's going to be number 2, and then the battle is on behind those guys. So I like Palmer. I like Tim Patrick as well. I think he's a guy who kind of came out of nowhere, but he's running with the ones for Denver. So not more of a best ball flyer, but we've seen Tim Patrick be productive when he's on the field, and he could very well be the number 2 target on that team after Cortland Sutton. So I think he's really he's rising rapidly in my board. Who else are you looking at wide receiver?
I think another guy worth talking about is Brandon Cooks. He's been operating as the wide receiver 1 during CeeDee Lamb's holdout, and all reports suggest he's been looking great. The possibility of a bounce back season, age 31 seemed lower, but just based on his performance at camp, it does seem possible. So I'm cautiously optimistic he could return to, wide receiver 3 flex option this year, especially in this offense. But I don't know what's up with CeeDee Lamb. This could be all resolved today. Who knows? But if this spills in the season, Cooks will be, the top receiver in this offense. So he could have some really elevated early season value if Lamb does hold out through the season. So he's a guy that I've been eyeing. Later on, he's around wide receiver 57. I think right now he's worth a flyer there, just based on how well he's been doing in camp and the small possibility, I would say, that Lamb's holdout actually, spills into the season.
Yeah, I think he's definitely being slept on, given the potential for Lamb to miss. And even if Lamb doesn't, I mean, you have more questions than ever at that number 3 wide receiver spot. You might just have a tougher go at it. The Cowboys win total is down to 9.5, juiced to the over. But remember, this is a team that's won 12, 12 games in each of the last 3 seasons. So they've commonly been in positive game script, which isn't always the greatest thing for wide receivers, especially when you have a target hog like Lamb. So I know Cooks did kind of pad his stats with that one huge game. I think it was against the Giants, but he could be a little bit more consistent this year, just out of necessity. The run game is probably not going to be as good either. So I think Cooks is. We've seen it. We've seen him produce wide receiver 1 value. I don't think he's a little older now, but he has a track record and he's in the right situation. You have the quarterback, you have the situation. You play a lot of games indoors, so I think Cooks is a great call there. Some other deeper guys that are rising on my board. Jalen Nailor for the Vikings looks like he's got that number 3 wide receiver role sewn up, and that could be relevant because the Vikings have been extremely pass heavy under Kevin O'Connell, and that's even without Kirk Cousins. In games that Cousins has missed, they've still been well over their expected pass rate on average, with guys like Jaron Hall and Nick Mullins and Joshua Dobbs last season as well. So it also comes into focus because not only is Nailor a pretty talented guy, just hasn't been able to stay healthy, but Jordan Addison's dealing with an injury. TJ Hawkinson's likely not going to be back until, sometime. He's probably going to be miss, the first month of the season, if not the first half of the season. So you could have that number 2, maybe number 3 role open on the Vikings. And you mentioned, Darnold is kind of sneaky. Jalen Nailor kind of sneaky as well, because he's a guy that if he's getting that number 2, 3 wide receiver role, or just getting a top 3 role, I should say, there's a chance that he's out there for almost every snap. He could be this year's Demarcus Robinson like the way Robinson was down the stretch with 5 top 25 finishes over a 6-week span once he took over that number 3 role, because O'Connell is a McVay disciple, should be, not quite as much 1-1 personnel, but I think Nailor is a little sneaky. Ray McLeod's probably going to see a ton of snaps because the Falcons are playing like 98% 1-1 personnel now with with the new regime there. And Rondale Moore got hurt, so Ray McLeod has been rested with the rest of the starters, treated as a starter. So I mean, in a PPR league, maybe he is a guy that catches 4 or 5 balls in a few games, and just kind of a late round flyer that gets you through some bye weeks or something like that. Cedric Wilson for the Saints, he's playing every snap. I don't know if that's going to change when Shaheed comes back, but I expected it to be more like a A.T. Perry or somebody like that, like a bigger guy But A.T. Perry looks like he's way down the depth chart. Bub Means is playing over him, so Wilson may end. New coordinator there, Kubiak taking over for Carmichael. So Wilson Jr. And who knows what's going on with Shaheed now? Because I like him as a sleeper, but anytime you have a new offense and Carr's learning the new offense too, and you're missing time, doesn't bode well. So Wilson, keeping an eye on him. And I think Traylon Burks is interesting just because everyone's kind of written him off, but he does have the pedigree. I think Tyler Boyd is kind of washed. His snap rate went way down last year, even with Callahan. So especially with this Hopkins injury, I think Burks is going to get a chance to kind of be a starter, but I think he could end up being that third wide receiver over Boyd. And remember, this Titan team is going to look totally different, kind of like the Falcons. They're going to be super pass heavy, probably, with Callahan, who is always very pass heavy in Cincinnati. Granted, Taylor was calling the plays, but you have Ridley, you have Hopkins, you have a quarterback that you did show some things last year in Levis, so you can conceivably go pass heavy. So I think Burks is somebody that I'm not saying he ends up finishing as a top 40 wide receiver or anything, but I do think he is going to be a factor for the Titans this year. And because he has that draft pedigree, I'm always going to keep an eye on him.
Yep.
All right, tight end. Who are you looking at there?
Isaiah Likely. He's one of, if not the best backup tight end in the league, in my opinion. And it's you can tell it's getting harder for Baltimore to keep him off the field. And they're probably looking to use more 2 tight end sets this year to have on the field with Mark Andrews. It's probably unlikely he's going to offer any fantasy value in traditional fantasy leagues as long as, Andrews is healthy. He could offer some more spiked weeks in best ball, even when Andrews is healthy. He's a solid red zone threat, so he could, score a vulture touchdown here or there. But he's a rare tight end where he actually has tight end 1 value or upside if and when Andrews were to miss time. So it's a situation where his ceiling's always going to be there with the potential of Andrews missing time, but his floor might actually be ending up in the tight end 2 range now as well. So I think that significantly raises his draft stock, in my opinion. And he's a guy that I'm always kind of intrigued in best ball leagues, or even like deeper season-long leagues, because you could stash him as a potential tight end 1. But I'm encouraged to hear that they might be using him more in 2 tight end sets, and hopefully that would raise his weekly floor even when Andrews is healthy.
I mean, last year Beckham was playing about 50% of the snaps. I think Likely's just kind of going to be in that role almost, not the same role as Beckham, but similar snap rate, because they didn't really replace him. They still have Bateman and Aguilar, but I think Likely's just going to be like kind of treated like a big slot receiver, and they're going to go with more 2 tight end sets. So I like Likely as well. For me, Taysom Hill. There was kind of some questions given Kubiak taking over. Would Hill still be a big part of the offense? But through 2 preseason games, he's played about 2/3 of the snaps with the first team offense. He has a 47% route participation rate. He's handled about 1/3 of the carries as well. So it still looks like he's going to be very involved. And Juwan Johnson working his way back from an injury. Mentioned Shaheed struggling with an injury. So once again, I think Kendre Miller as well. So once again, I think Taysom Hill will serve in a variety of roles. Looks like he's going to be in the backfield even more this year, play some fullback. But the fact that he has that dual threat ability as a runner, and he's still going to be running some routes. And you could always throw a pass or 2 here or there, but I think that's going to be less of a part of his game this year. But I was encouraged by the usage for Hill with the new regime. All right, before we move on, I just wanted to remind everyone again, all of our fantasy football content this season will be available at FantasyLabs.com. Our fantasy rankings, projections, Sean's tiers, and more, all available right now at FantasyLabs.com. And you can get $20 off our draft kit by using the promo code FLEX20 at FantasyLabs.com/flex. That's FLEX20 at FantasyLabs.com/flex. Visit FantasyLabs.com/flex to take advantage now. All right, stock down, guys who are falling in your rankings. First up, quarterback. Who you got?
Well, it goes without saying, but Aiden O'Connell is plummeting in my rankings because, as we saw, the Raiders' preseason game this Saturday was an audition for the Week 1 starting job, and I actually bet on the Cowboys in game because I thought Aiden O'Connell was done for the day. He had already had a drive in the third quarter. I thought he had the Week 1 job locked up. He came out for one more drive, and he threw a pick six, and I think that's what did it. I think that really did it for him. So, after the game, Antonio Pierce announced that Gardner Minshew would be the Week 1 starter. So I was projecting O'Connell for around 9 starts and Minshew around 8, a very close battle. And it still might be. I mean, this is something that's going to happen throughout the season, but I flipped it. Now it's closer to, I have Minshew around 10, 11 starts on the season, and O'Connell around 6 to 7. So, he's outside of, the top 30 for me now. And this is a move that it might upset Devontae Adams. I know he had voiced that he prefers O'Connell. So we'll see if this, leads to Adams being traded, but that would be a downgrade for both Raiders quarterbacks. So it was just not a good weekend for Aiden O'Connell. He's still a guy I think has some upside. He still might end up taking over this job in season from Gardner Minshew. So I've pumped the brakes a bit when it comes to O'Connell because, again, he lost the job. So I moved him down quite a bit in terms of projected starts.
The beat writers actually think it's not the pick six because they said Minshew actually has thrown more picks in camp than O'Connell. They're saying it's more so they feel like Minshew gives them more ability to just kind of move around in the pocket, do some things off the rollout and things like that. So I guess they want a little bit more mobility. The offensive line isn't looking as great as you would expect. So it's a fluid situation. But for me, Brock Purdy, and that's just because there's a lot of uncertainty that we didn't know we were gonna still be dealing with at this point. What's gonna happen with Brandon Ayuk? Are they gonna trade Ayuk for somebody that can actually replace him, or are they gonna have to rely on guys like Ricky Pearsall, who's gotten behind the 8 ball in camp and is a rookie, guys like Journeyman, Chris Conley might have to play if in that scenario. And then where's Trent Williams? Trent Williams is a massive part of this offense, and if he is not in the lineup, any game that he's not in the lineup, I mean, we saw that last year at Purdy. Anytime he was missing, his key guys, Williams, Debo, like the numbers weren't as good, and there were some struggles. So Purdy he was always kind of going to be more of a floor quarterback, but now with this uncertainty, I would rather just take a flyer on a guy like Caleb Williams, on a guy like Jaden Daniels, because Purdy he'll have streaming value, and maybe he ends up being a top 10 quarterback startable again. But right now with Williams and Ayuk, those are massive pieces to that offense that are kind of in limbo. So don't love Brock Purdy's stock right now. Herbert as well. I just don't like when a guy's dealing with an injury heading into the year. We saw Burrow really struggle for the first month last year, never kind of got it together too much. So and especially with this new offense, run heavy, Herbert, not feeling great about him. Already mentioned Russell Wilson, did not look good. Running back, who is falling down your board there?
Yeah, so I have a couple of backup rookie running backs that are falling down my board right now. And the first is Marshawn Lloyd of the Packers. Lloyd's in a battle right now with A.J. Dillon for the backup role. But he's been missing time with this hamstring injury, preventing him from cementing his case to be the backup. And even when he was healthy, the Packers were still treating him like the number 3. This is, like every running back situation, it's fluid. So I think eventually he probably would leapfrog Dillon, but he can't right now because he's hurt. So there's a real shot that he opens the season as the number 3 back. So, his ADP is probably too high for me right now. And, maybe the Packers do something crazy like move on from A.J. Dillon before the season. That would, change my outlook with Lloyd. But either way, just not a great start for Lloyd, who I thought was a sneaky pick by the Packers there. But, I'm moving him down the ranks as we speak. And Tyrone Tracy is of the Giants is another one I've been slightly moving down because, he was looking like the clear favorite to open the season as the Giants' number 2 back, but he's been missing time with an ankle injury. I think he just returned to practice today. But Eric Gray's been excellent in preseason, and he was a rookie last season. They both backs were drafted in the 5th round, I think. So, it might be more of a 50-50 split right now. We'll have to see how this next week or two go. But Tracy's stock specifically has been going down a bit for me. But that's kind of how all these backups, situations are for me. It's a fluid situation. Anything can change. But as of now, Tracy's been.
Yeah, I almost feel like we're just yelling into the void because it's like I don't think I think it's because we play so much best ball. We start drafting so early that there's this anchoring bias where we were excited about Marshawn Lloyd, we were excited about Tracy, and their ADPs are like, especially Lloyd, it's just ridiculous. I mean, you talked about like he may start the year as the 3rd runner. He's absolutely starting the year as the 3rd. He'll be lucky if he plays over Emmanuel Wilson to start the year, who's there last year. You know what I mean? And we've seen this before with LaFleur, where they essentially redshirted Dillon's first year. So and you got Josh Jacobs. You don't need like as good as Lloyd is talented, but you have Jaden Reed. You have so many weapons. You have 2 tight ends that you want to get the ball to. So there's just no incentive to really rush him or kind of work him in any more than they need to. And they can like as a top 50 back. I mean, there's so many other guys. Or even outside the top 50, so many other guys that, and I'm sure you've gone over in your running back upside rankings who are just they're clear number 2 running back on their team. Like we don't know what's going on with Lloyd. He may be the number 3 all year. He may start the year as like a healthy scratch because if you don't like the thing about Dillon is he's big and so he can pass protect. If you don't trust Lloyd in pass protection and he's missed so much camp and he's not going to have a game day role, I mean, what are you really doing with him? So yeah, I think he's way overdrafted. There's a lot better ways for you to use that pick. But I think this is more of like a best ball expert kind of thing than like I don't think anyone who's just kind of tuning back in now is like, oh yeah, I was just rearing to spend my RB 49 pick on Marshawn Lloyd, So
right,
that's what
right. Just these backups are on my mind from doing my chart, and I think you made a great point of just people not really adjusting based on the news that's happening. Like we spent all off season, the summer coming up with our rankings projections, and then we have a ton of new information now. We need to be using that. It goes with like Kamani Vidal of the Chargers. Like everybody was high on him, but so far, he hasn't been treated like the number 3 back, and Dobbins is looking healthier than we anticipated. So we just have to be making these adjustments now that we're getting actual data and info to go off.
Vidal is a guy that's falling down my board. I mean, I watched him, Jarrett Patterson, Isaiah Spiller, and Elijah Dotson all just rotated in and out all game. So I think Vidal ultimately gets that role, but he's had to earn it, and he's clearly behind the top 2. So. You're essentially banking on, 2 injuries, which not great. Jonathan Brooks, another guy who just, kind of our fears confirmed. He's probably going to start the year, on one of the injury lists, and the Panthers have no incentive to bring him along fast either. I mean, they're not competing for anything. They have right now they have 2 backs on the roster. One of them is Hubbard, who played really well. The second is Sanders, who they're paying a lot of money. So if they don't trade him, there's really no incentive to rush Brooks back in what's probably going to be kind of a, feeling out the, get your feet wet, get young, some confidence. Like there's no rush with Jonathan Brooks. So you can't necessarily just, okay, let's say he comes back in week 5 even, but you can't just pencil him in for like 14 carries a game, starter role, just because he's, just when he comes back, he might not achieve that role all season because, like you said, Hubbard has been playing pretty well, and we don't know what's going to happen with Sanders. So, he's been falling. And then Jaylen Warren, starting not to feel as great about him. Number one, we saw Najee Harris kind of outplay him down the stretch last year and take some of that role back that he had given up to Warren. But now you're also dealing with an injury for Warren, and we saw that Cordell Patterson still exists, and this is Arthur Smith. So Arthur Smith never really makes sense, and you never know what he's gonna do. But like, I'd rather take the guy in Najee Harris who, like, he's gonna get his snaps and his touches. Warren's the guy that we're kind of betting on talent, and okay, he can kind of, we were drafting him as a top 30 guy because he was kind of eating into Harris's role and he keep playing pass downs. But this new offense, Smith is always kind of favored. I feel like these bigger backs, like he gave a lot of work to Tyler Algier more than expected. Derrick Henry, that one year when Deion Lewis and Henry were expected to have like a 50-50 split, and Henry ends up, getting all the carries. I think that could happen with Najee, because you always say Najee's the closest thing we have to Derrick Henry. So I think this is like, and Warren is a late round pick too. So new regime. The red flags are out for me with Warren as well.
Yeah, it was at the end of the season. I was saying Najee's like literally morphing into Derrick Henry because he had that 3-game stretch where he didn't catch a single pass too. So
the Steelers might not throw if they don't require Ayuk, given how Wilson looked.
True.
Van Jefferson's their their number 2 receiver right now.
Yikes.
Speaking of wide receiver, who is falling down your draft board after 2 weeks of the preseason at that position?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but it's Jordan Addison for me, and he's a guy, I love him as a talent. He's still a guy, I'd be willing to bet on talent, but he suffered that ankle injury. Luckily, it's not expected to really prevent him from suiting up week 1, but something we need to monitor. But I guess there's still a chance he does end up facing some sort of suspension later in the season based on, some of his offseason issues. So that needs to be considered. Plus, I think losing JJ McCarthy for the season doesn't really impact my projections for him per se, but the chances of McCarthy breaking out as a rookie and really elevating the offense was there to a certain extent. So now that the ceiling is Sam Darnold, it kind of just
don't forget about Nick Mullins.
Sort of
don't sleep.
When it comes...
sleep. Huh? Nick Mullins is the ceiling.
That's
I
true,
agree.
but
I totally agree.
Well, it's just another quarterback in the mix that could have been one to elevate the offense. So just JJ McCarthy getting ruled out for the season doesn't help Addison, but he just has all these underlying issues where it's just tough to draft him in that range. And I feel like we've been talking about a lot of receivers that go shortly after him too. Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas, Romeo Dobbs, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Josh Palmer, those guys. When Addison's going off the board, I'm more than willing to wait for some of these, guys around wide receiver 50. So there's enough red flags for me now to pump the brakes on him. Once you see like the top 40, if he's still on the board. So he's a guy that's been moving down my draft board.
I agree. And the ankle injury is maybe it's not going to destroy a season, but it's still not ideal. You know how I feel about these injured guys heading into week 1. I think people kind of overlook the potential impact. So Addison's been falling. Marquise Brown has been falling. Joshua Downs has been falling just because not only is he going to start the year hurt, but he struggled. He kind of played through an injury last year. So now you're just kind of worried about, is he always going to have nagging injuries? Number 2, he's probably not going to play too much in, 1-2 personnel. And the Colts have like 18 tight ends. So they're going to play a lot of 1-2 personnel. And now you add a rookie and A.D. Mitchell to the mix who is playing in the slot, which is Downs' role. So there's just a lot of, if Mitchell breaks out, that really limits it lowers the floor and caps the ceiling of Downs. And I don't like the fact that he's kind of behind the 8 ball here. Talented guy, usually like to bet on guy, second year breakouts, but Downs kind of broke out already, and he's probably due for regression, if anything. Quentin Johnston, sure, he got drafted with a top 20 pick or whatever. This dude is terrible. I watched him up close and personal, just like just battle fifth string corners. And I mean, he made like one good catch on the sideline, but the fact that he was out there like deeper into the game than guys like DJ Chark and who was it, Cornelius Johnson and Brendan Rice, like this is a new regime, and they clearly have no respect for Quentin Johnston's draft pedigree, and there's no reason to. He's given them no reason to. The Broncos already talked about them, but Marvin Mims seems more like he only played like one snap with the first team again for the second straight preseason week. So it looks like he's going to be more of a return specialist and mix in here and there on offense, but not a top 3 receiver as I think, we had probably envisioned at one point in the offseason. And then Troy Franklin, the rookie, I don't know where he is either because Tim Patrick's, balling out. Sutton's obviously the number 1, and Josh Reynolds was the most highly used number 3 guy. And Franklin just seems way down the depth chart, kind of battling guys like Will Jordan Humphrey and the other rookie Vele, who's I think outplayed him. So Franklin, I don't think they're going to cut bait or anything, but he's like a healthy scratch candidate because they're going to have to stash him on the roster because they can't put him through waivers. So that's disappointing because he had that experience with Knicks and in school. Roman Wilson, another guy that I think started the year preseason a lot higher on, just hasn't been able to get on the field. So it's going to be Pickens, it's going to be Jefferson, it's going to be Calvin Austin, and then you're also looking at a potential Ayuk trade. So I don't really see a path anymore, especially with this crappy quarterback situation for Wilson. And then even Pearsall, I think Pearsall is still a guy who I'm a little worried about, even if they trade Ayuk. They're talking about Conley and Jennings, and I just don't know if Pearsall hits the ground running. He did miss some time in camp and just really it's been quiet. So again, a lot of these guys who probably if you're just kind of tuning back in for redraft strategy, I apologize, but these are some guys that were getting pretty highly drafted in best ball. So I just thought I'd kind of lay out that they should not be drafted that high.
Yeah, Pearsall's been a guy moving down my rankings because it seems more likely than not that Ayuk's going to stay in San Francisco. Plus, their 4th round other rookie receiver, Jacob Cowing's been looking pretty solid in preseason. I always loved him at Arizona, and again, they took him in the 4th round, so he might actually surprise and be above.
No, good. Oh, keep going.
He's just been playing well. He's been out there playing, and Pearsall has not. So that's he's been moving up, at least on my projections. But still, Pearsall is still a highly coveted draft pick. But again, like it might not matter because if Ayuk stays, it's going to be hard for them.
I was going to say, what if Pearsall is just the latest edition of the Trey Lance, Trey Sermon overhyped failed draft picks, where it's like another guy that they drafted later ends up being the actual guy. I mean, unfortunately, it seems like, and the funny thing with Pearsall is he was already kind of drafted like more so as like a pro ready guy who isn't like super impressive. Like he's not going to blow you away when you watch like the tape or the athleticism, but just kind of a pro ready guy, can do a lot of different things. So, I mean, there is bust potential. So I just want to see him on the field and hopefully he can kind of get it going. But until I do, I'm out on him. Tight end, who are you down
on? Cole Kmet's dropping a bit in my rankings. Caleb Williams trending up. It's very much a situation where, rising tide lifts all boats. So I've been raising a lot of Bears pass catcher projections in my model. Kmet will be the clear starting tight end in this offense. It's becoming clear that Gerald Everett is going to have
Waldron
a role
loves him
in this offense as well. He's reuniting with Shane Waldron from their Seahawks days. So that's going to be annoying if, he sees any dip in playing time. That's going to impact him because he was, considered on that fringe of, like a high end tight end 2, maybe a tight end 1, but he's a little bit further down in more the mid range tight end 2 range for me, which is if you're in traditional seasonal head-to-head leagues, he's going to be on the waiver wire. So he's a guy that's been moving down because I think we do have to take this seriously with Gerald Everett potentially eating into his.
I just want to have like blank cells in my spreadsheet after Dalton Schultz at tight end. Can I just there's no tight end I want to draft. Like 13, like this. Because like Kmet was supposed to be the tight end 14 for me, and now it's like I don't
Right?
want him, but like Freiermuth is also. I don't know what's going on with him. It's like we're gonna have to.
TJ Hawkinson's there for me
he's
too.
probably
And he's missing half the
he's
season.
probably not going to hit that value, and then like Musgrave is in the committee, so it's like, are we going to have to do the Taysom Hill thing again? Like, because Henry's banged up. Like it's getting out of hand.
Tyler Conklin,
Zach Ertz
baby.
for me. Zach Ertz for me.
He's the Robert Tunyon.
Oh!
I'm gonna get the wrong guy.
Munt is gonna be TJ Hawkinson. Forget Naylor. Forget Addison. It's gonna be Johnny Money Munt, baby. Look out for him. But yeah, seriously, tight end is tough. So spend a preview pick on one because it gets really tough.
Yes.
Guys falling down my board at tight end. Jonnu Smith looks like he's gonna be in more of a committee with Durham Smythe and with even maybe Julian Hill. Ben Sano, another guy who everyone was excited about, rookie, had that nice catch in Rumble in week one. But he played behind John Bates, and Jack Ertz has been kept in bubble wrap. And from everything I hear on the beat, Ertz has been one of Daniel's favorite targets in camp. And remember, Ertz, Cliff Kingsbury, 2022, McBride is a rookie. Ertz is old. Ertz plays 85% of the snaps. McBride is an afterthought, playing 15% of the snaps for the whole entire first half of the year, and would have been the whole year probably. But then Ertz got hurt, so that could happen again. But Bates is the top blocking tight end, and so it looks like Sano is third on the depth chart, and yet he's being drafted as like a borderline low end tight end too.
Yeah,
don't do it.
I warned everybody, Ertz is the tight end blocker. He did it to, like you said, Trey McBride and Dallas Goedert. So that's just his role. Ben Sinnott will probably break out in year 2 or 3.
Jelani Woods, he's at this point, he's fighting for a roster spot. So there's a time when I had him as the number 1 tight end for the Colts. Now he's the tight end 5 for the Colts because you drafted Will Mallory last year, so you're not gonna move on from him. Ogletree has been solid. It looks less and less likely they're going to move on from Cox because he's the top blocker, and Granson is still running with the ones. So Woods has been the 5th tight end in the rotation, and the injuries probably have just sapped him. And this is Ballard did draft him, but Steichen I don't think was there when that happened. So he's kind of falling out of favor. Maybe he gets a new landing spot, and he can help us somewhere else at tight end because it's barren because he has talent, but the fact that he's the tight end 5 on anyone's depth chart, not a good look. So don't not the flyer you want to take even late in best ball. All right, that's going to do it for our preseason risers and fallers for 2024 here on the Fantasy Flex. We'll be back with our best ball strategy episode next. That should be good, and we'll dig into sleepers, busts, league winners next week. So make sure to smash that subscribe button if you haven't already, wherever you get your podcast. That is the Fantasy Flex. That will be coming at you in full force, heading right into the 2024 fantasy season. Once again, FantasyLabs.com contains all of our fantasy football content, our draft kit, our rankings, our projections, and code FLEX20 gets you $20 off at FantasyLabs.com/flex. You can find Kerner on X at _oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon. We're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app, where we're going to start, looking at win totals and futures and start really getting some stuff in there. So make sure to follow us on there. But until next time, let's get this money.